Hi everybody, 2.2, adding rational numbers. We've been talking about rational numbers. At this point you should understand what a rational number is. This time we're going to work on adding them. As it says there, use the same rules as you would for adding integers. We just went through adding integers in chapter 1, so keep those in mind. One other thing to consider, if you're adding a decimal, do make sure you line up the decimal points. If I want to add 1.2 plus 3.4, my decimals here have to be in line because I would bring them down and add that together to get 4.6. Okay? Here's our first example problem. In this case, we're looking at two fractions, negative 8/3 plus a 5/6. To add fractions, you have to find what's called a common denominator. Common denominator in this case between 6 and 3 can be just plain old 6, so the 5/6 can just come down. And I'm going to add, I got a common denominator of 6. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 2 times 8 is 16. Negative 16/6 plus 5/6. As the last slide said, just use the same rules that you use for integers. I'm going to add negative 16 plus the 5 here. My denominator comes over, it's 6. When I add negative 16 and add 5 to that, I'm going to get a negative 11, so it becomes a negative 11/6. We just spent last section putting those into mixed numbers. I'm going to make that into a negative 1, and 5 is left over, so it's negative 1 and 5/6. Here is an example of a decimal addition of decimals, negative 4.05 plus 7.62. Again, line up the decimal points when you do this, 7.62. Okay? If you remember, use the same rules as integers. We can subtract the absolute values, so that becomes then a much better problem for us, 7.62. I'm going to subtract 4.05, and then I'm going to use the greater absolute value. The greater absolute value is a 7.62, so I know my answer is going to be negative. Remember, you can use calculators in this section if you want to use that. That becomes 7, 5, and 7 minus 4 gets me 3.57. Again, I'm going to use the greater absolute value, which is a positive, so my answer is 3.57. Last problem to take a look at. You're going to start to see more of these sprinkled in. These are some algebra. We did a few of these last chapter, x and y's, and plug in what you know. The problem becomes 2 times x is 1/4, and then I want to add a negative 3/2 to that. So we multiply 2 times 4. That becomes just 2/4, which we of course know is 1/2, and I want to add the negative 3 over 2. We know that we just bring the common denominator across to get 2, and same rules apply here that we talked about with integers. You're basically being asked 1 plus a negative 3. 1 plus a negative 3. 1 plus a negative 3 is a negative 2. And my problem left over is negative 2 divided by 2, which we can reduce that, and our grand answer can just be a negative 1. Here is my grand answer. Kind of a mess on the paper, sorry. Negative 1 would be final answer. Okay, you're going to need to turn these notes into Schoology, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow. Have a good day.